Oh, sorry, I should also mention that we'll have time for questions at the end, but please put them in the chat box as well. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks for that, Nellie. Yeah, so not too much exploring beautiful, amazing places overseas at the moment, but hopefully we'll get to that before too much longer. Also, too, we're from the land that I'm on is home of the Quandamooka people, and as part of my role in managing an accommodation retreat, I've been very fortunate to have met some of the elders there and some of the upcoming stars from the Quandamooka people who get involved in the tourism initiatives around this area. So we're very fortunate to have such an innovative and creative group of people representing our Aboriginal Indigenous population here in North Stradbroke Island and the mainland. Okay, so I'd just like to start by talking about our single-use plastics items in healthcare. So probably if you've ever been to a hospital, you can probably imagine and recall the huge amounts of plastics that come as part of being in a hospital care situation. Because of the infection control issues around managing the health of people, obviously that's a paramount consideration in whatever we do. So whilst there's lots of plastics that we'd like to get rid of, sometimes that's not currently feasible for us. So what I'd just like to do is start by giving a very brief overview about Ramsay Healthcare, just to put it all in context. So Ramsay started in Australia, in Sydney, with a hospital, and then it grew from there, and it's become a global organisation across 11 countries, with over 480 locations, 8.5 million patients, and over 77,000 staff. Australia was where it was born, and it's still the largest region significantly compared to all the other regions. And Ramsay Healthcare is the largest private hospital operator in the country. We have over 1 million admissions per annum, and we employ over 32,000 staff. So that just sort of gives you a bit of a context. So the reason I'm telling you this is that the initiative that we created here with the single-use plastics, and the fact that it worked, has been a fairly significant initiative for Ramsay globally as well. Okay, so the next slide really just gives you a very quick snapshot of our waste profile. One of the things that we struggled with for a long time was we had a sustainability working group that had spent a lot of time and energy trying to look at how we can become more sustainable. And the focus predominantly and overwhelmingly was about energy efficiency, because that's where the bang for buck came from. Coupled with that, we found it really difficult to get data from our waste contractors at the time. And the data that we were getting, we didn't really have a lot of confidence in, and it was difficult to understand and interpret and get a deeper understanding about where we needed to focus. Fortunately, that's changed in the last 2 years, and so we get good reporting. We can dive down to a hospital level. We can group it by regions, by states, by peer groups, etc., as well as overall. So this is our snapshot. Overall, we recycle about 44% of all of our waste, and that's diverted from landfill. The majority of our waste that does go to landfill is just under 11,000 tonnes, and then on top of that, you've got just under 2,000 tonnes of clinical waste, which needs to be incinerated first because of infection control issues before it's sent to landfill. So we were pretty proud of our recycling results, even before we started this initiative. So really the background to the initiative, how did it start? We'd been sitting there trying to work out how we can be more efficient from an energy perspective. We knew that we wanted to do something with waste. We'd done lots of work previously with our clinical teams about better managing clinical waste, which is an expensive stream that has to be incinerated and then go to landfill, to try and pull out stuff that didn't need to go down that path. The difficulty is that theatres are very busy places, and oftentimes the focus obviously is on the patient and the procedure. So trying to get people to consistently focus on the better segregation of clinical waste is always challenging, and it's an ongoing education, review and compliance process. So this is how this 24 million plastics issue came up. So we had the great data from our waste suppliers and we could see what was happening. We had a great insight through our SAP system to see what items people were purchasing. And we were able to start identifying targets and areas that we wanted to pinpoint and think about what opportunities there were to make a difference around waste. You might recall there was a big story on the war on waste that was presented through the media. And around about the same time, there was quite a bit of media focus too about single-use plastics and the impact that they have on the environment and also on our oceans. We also knew that some of the states, particularly South Australia, were looking at introducing plastics deadlines in coming years. And so we knew that we were going to have to do it anyway. We were getting patients' feedback and staff feedback saying, you know, why can't we get rid of plastic water bottles? Why do we have plastic cutlery? And so that was all contributing to this sentiment about, you know, we need to do something and we should be doing something, we should be leading the way. So we felt that we had fairly high level of support from our community, our patients and our staff to make a difference and start doing something. At the same time, Ramsay globally was wanting to establish a global sustainability strategy. And in the lead up to that strategy development, they organised a series of workshops at each region globally, and staff from all levels within the organisation were invited to come along to a one-day workshop to identify what were the critical things that they felt Ramsay could make a significant difference about in relation to sustainability. The overwhelming feedback from all of the regions was about waste, and whether it was wasting energy, wasting product, wasting our time, wasting our financial resources, duplicating things, whatever it was about reducing waste. So that then led to the development of a global sustainability strategy, which I'll talk a little bit further on down in the presentation. So all of this was all coming together, and we have an environmental sustainability working group, and so we were trying to work out what would be a key thing that we could do as a working party that would really set us on the track for starting to manage waste better. Some of the things we thought about was from a degree of difficulty perspective, we didn't want to spend the next 2 years trying to work out, you know, difficult clinical products and whether they were okay from a clinical or an infection control perspective, or whether our doctors would accept the product. And we really wanted something that was fairly easy to do and would get everybody on board, I suppose, with the idea of making changes. So what we decided was we wanted to focus predominantly on non-clinical items. And we wanted to have items that were low, if they were clinical, that they were low risk and they didn't have any potential issues or kickback from clinicians or specialists and doctors. And obviously those that were high volumes, we didn't want to have to deal with lots of tiny little products that didn't really make a difference. From our procurement team's perspective, they were also keen to make sure that we could find suitable alternatives that were readily available already in the marketplace, that we could easily swap over across our hospitals, and that they could manage the supply contracts and negotiations, hopefully with some of our existing suppliers. So that was the impetus for us to look at, well, what are we going to do and how is procurement going to help us get there? Our procurement team were absolutely critical to this initiative getting to where it is today. Ramsay has a group procurement team. They provide support for all of our hospitals and manage all of our national contracts. They're an extremely busy, diligent, amazing group of people who really got on board with this 100%. They looked at how they could source alternative products. They came back with a range of different products that we could select from. They managed the contracts. They organised the pre-start rollout of the items. They looked at developing management systems around compliance. And they also addressed the issues and feedback that we got from sites about particular products. And that is what led us to our focus on reducing single-use plastic products going to landfill. So the next slide shows you what that looks like. To get to 24 million, we were even surprised, I think. When we pulled the data out of our financial system to see what we were ordering nationally, we were pretty shocked, really, to see where the big numbers were. When we tallied them all up, our denture cups and lids, the drinking cups and lids, the forks and knives, the medication cups, plates, spoons, straws, kidney dishes, and got to the 24 million, there were certainly a few eyebrows raised. In addition to that, and since that, we've also been focusing on things like takeaway food containers, injection trays, plastic water bottles, IV tubes, IV bags and oxygen tubing. So they're in addition to that 24 million. So the next slide talks about how we got buy-in. When we got to the 24 million, I happened to mention it to somebody in our marketing team who forwarded it on to the marketing manager, who was the global marketing manager for Ramsay Healthcare. And they were ecstatic. They went, 24 million, that's fantastic. And I think that was when we suddenly realised that this was quite a big initiative for Ramsay. And to get that support from the global team as well as from the Australian team was fantastic. We had some key influential corporate individuals on board. Our CEO for Australia was hugely supportive of the initiative. As I mentioned, our global marketing team were hugely supportive. Our chair of the Sustainability Committee is also our senior risk manager for Ramsay Australia. And that Sustainability Working Party reports through to the Risk Committee. So again, it gives us an opportunity to present what we're doing at a high level within Ramsay Australia. I think for us I can't stress enough that we just had fantastic timing. You know, the fact that the global focus around sustainability happened to time with all the media attention around the single-use product issue was just, you know, all our ducks came together in a lovely little row at that same time. We continued to get feedback from patients and staff while all of this was being discussed, and so that added further fuel to the fire that we needed to do something. I think too that when we realised it was such a big number, we knew that it was going to be an initiative that our staff could feel really proud of and feel that they'd made an impact beyond just their own hospital. And one of the other key things too was about keeping our sites informed about what was being proposed, getting them involved in the rollout of the products, and also taking their advice in relation to products that they weren't confident about or they felt that there were some issues around. In terms of preparing for the launch, there's obviously a lot of work that the procurement team needed to do in relation to specifying the products, arranging pricing, getting product codes, all the logistics that go behind it all. But the other thing that we also recognised was that if this initiative was going to cost more than what we were currently paying for all of those products, because it is such a big number, that there was a significant potential that we wouldn't get the initiative across the line. So the objective for our procurement team was to ensure that overall the product group came in at cost neutral, which they did achieve. So in November 2019, our CEO was very proud and excited to announce that on World Environment Day on June 20, 2020, we were going to instigate a ban on all of those plastic items so that our staff and our sites wouldn't be able to purchase those and would need to opt for a more sustainable product. We were also thrilled that our global CEO, Craig McNally, included that initiative as part of his address and his mention in the annual impact report, which is published as part of our annual report documentation. The purchasing contract negotiations were finalised before the launch actually took place. And our communications team, our marketing team were fantastic in terms of putting together press releases, Facebook posts, online newsletters, websites, etc. So we have Facebook pages for our staff that they can access and various groups that they can join into. And that ensures that people who don't have Ramsay email addresses can also access and keep up to date with what's going on. I think the decision to roll out the stock as it became available was also a great initiative because it gave sites the opportunity to get on board early, and it also gave us an opportunity to nut out any issues as well. We took feedback from our sites. One of the things that was flagged was, for instance, to do with coffee cups. Of course, the most important product in the whole product line was making sure that we had good coffee cups, and it was about making sure that the coffee cups were robust enough for hot liquids or cold liquids and that they were easily identifiable, that people wouldn't make the mistake of putting the wrong one in the wrong the wrong product in the wrong cup. And then COVID came along, and it actually wasn't part of our project plan, so that put a bit of a kibosh on things. You might recall during the height of the COVID pandemic that for hospitals, the biggest issue was about ensuring that we were able to secure sufficient and appropriate personal protective equipment for all of our staff, our doctors and our patients. So immediately our procurement team just swung into all hands on deck to ensure that we were able to secure those supplies. And our 24 million product initiative went on to the back burner for several months. Incredibly, and again, all credit to the procurement team, amidst all of that, major drama and supply chain issues and all the interruptions, they were still able to get us to the launch with the majority of the products that we wanted to go with. They were also able to get out to all of our supply managers and let them know of the mechanics of the change, how it would progress, the new codes that they'd need to use, the ones that were going to be blocked, and that would be the way the change would progress.
So we just have a couple more minutes, if that's okay.
Yep, I'm just about finished. So the launch went through on June 20, World Environment Day. The purchasing ban was implemented, and there's still a lot of promotion that was done predominantly with our internal staff. So these are our results to date. Since we started the initiative, we've just avoided over 10 million items. Since the actual ban was instigated, just over 8 million. We've got compliance on 55% of the products, 100%. We've allowed a small percentage of plastic items for medications with medication cups and kidney dishes where those procedures and medications need to have an impervious product, such as a plastic cup or a plastic dish. Some of our products weren't available until October 20, which has put us a little bit behind April. Excuse me, apologies for that. And we still have some supply issues with one product not quite meeting our expectations in terms of one supplier not being able to meet our supply requirements. The next step for us is really about managing the ongoing compliance with our group, growing our engagement around waste management and minimising waste through our facility waste committees and site sustainability champions. We're also moving to phase out the 6 million single-use plastic water bottles that are in use, and 2 of our larger hospitals have recently come on board with that, and collectively they use 880,000 single-use plastic water bottles a year, so that's a significant dent on that 6 million target. There's a couple of things that we're also targeting there that are listed there, and now this initiative is being adopted by some of our other Ramsay regions, notably the UK and the Indonesian group. Ramsay Cares strategy was also promulgated and announced as part of this strategy or this initiative. And this is just a very brief summary of the Ramsay Care strategy. It's all about caring for people, caring for our planet and caring for community. And it also puts the particular goals of the Sustainability Development Goals. So that's us.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sue. What an amazing story. I know that there's a few people that have got questions in the chat, if you're happy to answer them. Bo, did you want to jump in and ask your question?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep. Just in regards to your slides and did you have, what would you call them, like brochures or, just sort of research material that we could also flip through at our leisure?
We're happy to share anything that we can provide you with. I'm not sure what sort of research you're after, but if you could let us know, Bo, yes, certainly we can provide something for you.
Yeah, no worries. Do you want me to post the question in the chat or through email?
Yeah, if you could just be a bit more specific about what you're looking for, either way, that's fine.
Yeah, no worries. I'll put it in the chat then.
Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Harold might also be able to, if there are a bunch of different questions, or very specific questions for Sue, we might be able to compile them, and Carol can help coordinate.
Great. And Claire Willix, did you want to jump in with your question?
Yes, hi, I hope you can hear me. To let me know if you can't, I'll put my camera on as well. I'm interested, Sue, that you got rid of single-use cutlery and cups, and I just wonder about the impact on the kitchen staff. Obviously, everything needs to be washed if you're using metal and proper crockery, and if there was any impact on extra workload from the kitchen staff with relation to that and how that was managed.
Sure, thanks for that, Claire. So all of our patients have metal cutlery already, and they always have had. So this was really in relation to where we have staff bistros, or where we might be providing day procedure patients with a pack of sandwiches, etc. So that's the only instance where we would have been using the plastic cutlery, or for functions, etc. So from a staff member perspective in catering, there was no impact for them.
Great. Thanks, Sue. And Kate, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, thanks, Millie. Hi, Sue. That's terrific. Well done. I'm just really interested in what you replaced everything with. So plastic water bottles, did you go to jugs? What were sort of the practical issues? We know with our hospitals, that means we have to get the nurses on board, we have to put in dishwashers and things. With the cutlery, I mean, although you said most of it's metal, what were the alternatives? Was it bamboo? What did you do with kidney dishes? What were sort of the practical issues there?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the plastic water bottles. So we gave sites a range of options. So it might be, particularly for our rehab programs, facilities or day surgeries or mental health units, the option for filtered water or cool water options where patients could fill up their own personal water bottles or cups and help themselves. But for our med-surg patients, the predominant focus was really reverting back to jugs and cups. And yes, they do need to have pantry washers, or go back for the smaller facilities, they go back to the main kitchen to be washed. One of the things I failed to mention too is we instigated that environmental CapEx fund 12 months ago, or 18 months ago now. And that's been a fantastic opportunity for us to get in sites to come on board with phasing out the plastic water bottles, because the biggest kickback that we always get is, oh, look, we have to install pantry washers. It's going to cost X dollars to do that. We can't afford it. Whilst we'd love to get on board, we can't afford it. And so with that fund, those two sites that I mentioned that, got rid of $880,000 a year, they both requested funding. I think one requested $128,000, the other one was $78,000 to put pantry washers. These are big hospitals. And they also kicked in a bit to, they took up the additional staff time. They looked at how they could rearrange their staffing rosters, as well as getting other staff involved in delivering jugs. So in some hospitals, it's only the catering staff that deliver the water. In other situations, they'll get some of the personal care assistants to help with delivering the water as well, so that you're not having, it's a more efficient way of dealing with it. So that was a great challenge, a great way of helping people get through the challenges. Mind you, we still have a number of big sites that we're targeting, and part of the process is about really getting the catering managers on side. And if the catering managers aren't keen, it's a bit of an uphill battle. Getting the CEOs on board is usually an easy side of things, but it's really about getting people involved. And I'll just add to, with the single-use plastic bottles, what we did was, when we announced this process, was that we invited all of the catering managers to a teleconference. We had a presentation about the issues from an infection control expert. So our infection control coordinator for Ramsay talked through the infection control things they needed to consider. We had our procurement team there to talk to them about how they could negotiate group buying for pantry washers or jugs or whatever it might be to keep the price down. And we also had somebody from a health and safety perspective about pushing trolleys with jugs of water, etc. So all of the issues that had been flagged in the past about why we couldn't revert back to jugs and cups, we had that discussion. We put it all up on our environment intranet page as well as a pilot and initiative, so that they can go there at their leisure and get all the advice and review as well.
Great. And presumably a big picture of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and the huge amount of plastic out in the ocean to sort of inspire people, perhaps.
Yeah, it's always a good one to have, isn't it? And I think, isn't it, that by 2050 there'll be more tons of plastic waste in the ocean and fish, so that's always a good one too, especially when you live near a beach.
Yeah, thanks. And was it, you mentioned at the start one of your objectives was to be cost neutral. Was plastic water bottles cost neutral? I mean, we spend a huge amount on bottled water, for instance.
Yeah, I think that was actually one of the tricky things that we had, because procurement do such a great job. They were getting plastic water bottles for, like, it cost nothing basically, to get it. So although when you're buying such
you factor in the waste costs, that's significant as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But sites would say, well, look, it's costing me, I can't remember the number, but it was something like, I think it was 20 cents a bottle. It might have been even cheaper than that. And so sites were saying, well, it's cheaper to give everybody 5 plastic water bottles with their meal tray than, having staff going back and filling up jugs of water. But I think, with the 2 sites that I said have made the change, when they costed out the savings they'd get from not purchasing the water bottles, plus plus the waste savings, and then they worked out the tons of waste with the pallet wrapping, the product wrapping, all the rest of it, and, they sort of said, we definitely want to make a change.
And sorry, just quickly, kidney dishes?
So what was the question on that one?
What's your alternative from plastic kidney dishes? Have you gone to the sugar mulch ones? Or?
Look, I think it's the sugar mulch ones. I'd have to double check. Sorry, I should have checked that beforehand, but I can.
Thanks. Sorry, I don't want to hog the question.
Yeah, that's all right.